Fraternal greetings, comrades. Karl Marx predicted with the increase of capital, there shall be an advancement in the technological levels of production. He said this will allow workers to communicate across borders, national divides, and shall bring together individuals who otherwise may never have come into contact with one another. In the furtherance of Comrade Marx's prediction, I am video recording a pamphlet I wrote called Catechism of a 21st Century Abolitionist. Very few men imprisoned for economic crimes or even crimes of passion against the oppressor feel they are really guilty. George Jackson, Field Marshal of Prisons and General of the Black Panther Party. I am suggesting we abolish the social function of prisons. Comrade Angela Davis. Northwest Ordinance of 1787. There shall be neither slavery nor involuntary servitude in the said territory, otherwise than in punishment of crimes whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, provided always that any person escaping into slavery, from whom labor or service is lawfully claimed in any one of the original states, such fugitive may be lawfully reclaimed and conveyed to the person claiming his or her labor or service as aforesaid. 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution of 1865. Neither slavery nor involuntary service shall exist in the United States except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party has been duly convicted. Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all of their forms. What is slavery? Slavery is a system for the extraction of labor where the person enslaved is either uncompensated or remunerated at a rate below the standard or market exchange rate for the same exact labor. Slavery was a universal system of production that arose with the negation of primitive communal societies. It is the first stage of the capitalist order. How and why did slavery become a peculiar institution? Slavery was commonly imposed on those that lacked property or power. It was also inflicted as war booty on conquered peoples and prisoners of war. Slavery was also a levy for the repayment of debts or for punishment of a crime. When the European imperial powers needed a labor force to colonize and settle in what they called the New World, they created pseudo-racist philosophies that viewed Africans as inferior subhumans and beasts of burdens, introducing practices that permanently enslaved darker peoples with special emphasis on anyone retaining even a drop of African blood. Hence, although all nationalities and races were once subject to the ravages of slavery due to law and custom in the United States of America, being black became synonymous with being a slave. What is slavery of the territory now known as the United States of America? The arrival of the first Africanized slaves occurred with the colonization of the new territories now known as the United States of America. On the first day of Black August in 1619 at Jamestown, Virginia, from the moment Africanized slaves arrived in the new territories, they began to rebel by either challenging the contradictions of Christian culture or escaping into the wilderness, joining native tribes and waging incessant war against racist colonizers. Is it true that the Africanized slaves were docile, accepting their fate? Absolutely, emphatically not. The African captive immediately went into battle mode, even long before touching the shores of North America. The majority died during the Middle Passage rather than suffer the indignity of slavery. The captured and condemned slave marooned societies in the mountains and woods. The rebel slave waged incessant guerrilla war on the colonial powers. But history says slaves were good Negroes for the master class, does it not? Yes, but this is a false history designed to negroize the captive to give the appearance of passivity and inferiority. This was done to denigrate the humanity of the descendants of slaves and deny the fact of any positive or progressive contribution to history other than being a servant to a superior master race who built everything with slave labor. Was the war between the states, the Civil War, fought to end slavery? No. Old dishonest Abraham Lincoln, slave master in chief, always made it clear he did not desire to end slavery, but sought to maintain the union of the states. Conversely, it was actually the Southern Confederacy that initiated war between the states. This was due to the competition posed by the Northern industrialists by introducing embargoes, forming international alliances, and encouraging disenchantment among the slaves. The rebellious slaves had always been a burden on the American Republic, with over 100,000 fleeing between 1810 and 1860. The war between the states was simply a competition between competing capitals, agrarianism and industrialism. So, what then were the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution? The Emancipation Proclamation was a war strategy. It lacked the authority to free even a single slave, as the 10 states in which it was proclaimed were also rebel states. Instead, it was deployed as a military tactic to recruit rebellious slaves to the Union Army, over 200,000, and encourage other rebellions in the Confederated States, disrupting the slave power. The 13th Amendment, on the other hand, was an adaptation of the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. This law, the Northwest Ordinance, contained a fugitive slave clause in support of the slave states and continued slavery in the so-called free states as a punishment for crime upon conviction. Slavery, or the slave codes, continued in all of the states long after the so-called American Revolution and Civil War. Slavery has continued in the United States to this day. Are you implying that slavery has continued into the 21st century in the United States of America? Comrade Abolitionist, I imply nothing. Slavery, by any other name, is slavery. In the United States of America, slavery is the supreme law of the land. It is constituted under the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, a mere redaction of the Northwest Ordinance. The 13th Amendment violates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which prohibits slavery in all of its forms. The prison slave industrial complex is a massive institution which is the chief instrument of repression in the United States. What then is the prison slave industrial complex? The prison slave industrial complex is a special institution of repression, control, and exploitation administered by the capitalist state. The state is an organ of class rule. It is a product of the irreconcilability of class antagonisms. The ruling class employs the state's due process of law by means of its criminal justice system to manipulate lumpenized classes into the prison slave industrial complex. This renders all crime, whether crime of passion, compulsion, or habit, to be a product of pre-existing and prevailing socioeconomic conditions prevalent to any urban development. The prison slave industrial complex comprises all areas of production and control from the criminal courts to prison facilities, but includes parole and probation departments and other custodial and monitorial systems. The prison slave industrial complex is the primary vehicle for the continuation of the racist and universal enslavement of the poor and minorities. It lowers the value of labor and constitutes a vast reserve army of labor. What can we do, abolitionists, to abolish slavery? Slavery is an abomination. International law demands all nations abolish slavery in all of its forms. The ruling class must accept the repeal of the 13th Amendment and adopt Article 4 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It must end hypocritical and unjust policies and laws that enslave the poor, disenfranchised minorities, immigrants, and other lumpenized groups. The people must forget their differences and unite to fight slavery. We must demand reparations for historical and contemporary slavery. Support the new Underground Railroad. Demand enforcement of international law. Donate, contribute, and fight slavery by any means necessary. Assist the negation as the primary force in the battle to end slavery and all forms of human bondage. Such is the Catechism of the 21st century abolitionists. President Abraham Lincoln. My paramount object in the struggle is to save the Union, and is neither to save or destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. If I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could do it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps the Union. Conductor General Harriet Tubman. I freed 1,000 slaves. I would have freed 1,000 more if they only knew they were slaves. We fight the Yankee state because the Yankee slave state enslaved the people. Homeland, communism, or death.